Good evening, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Focus on peaceful resolution of Ukraine conflict and deepening bilateral ties. Trump's tariffs induce volatility in global markets. India, Brazil reaffirm commitment to defend multilateralism amidst tariff challenge. United Nations says Israel's decision to expand military operations in Gaza deeply alarming as Prime Minister Netanyahu seeks complete control of Gaza. And India's cabinet approves 30,000 crore rupees compensation for oil marketing companies to offset domestic LPG sale losses. Continue 12,000 crore rupee subsidies for household cooking gas. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a telephone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday. President Putin briefed Prime Minister Modi on the latest developments concerning Ukraine. While thanking President Putin for his detailed assessment, Prime Minister Modi reiterated India's consistent position for peaceful resolution of the conflict. The two leaders also reviewed progress in the bilateral agenda and reaffirmed their commitment to further deepen the special and privileged strategic partnership between India and Russia. Prime Minister Modi invited President Putin to India later this year for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. A top story: while nations like India and Brazil are facing steep American tariffs, deliberating ways to offset the challenge, a study shows that Trump's tariffs will likely have an adverse impact on American consumers as well. The steep tariffs are also inducing significant volatility in global markets. Here's more.
Trump's global tariffs have started evoking sharp reactions. These are visuals of a traders' protest in India's Kanpur city, an important commercial hub contributing significantly to exports to the United States. This is after the US imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian imports over a previously announced 25% tariff, a move that sharply escalated tensions between the two nations after trade talks reached a deadlock. Amidst volatility in global markets induced by Trump tariffs, leaders of India and Brazil held a phone call on Thursday. At 50% tariffs, India and Brazil face one of the highest taxes levied by Trump. The leaders discussed international economic scenario and the imposition of unilateral tariffs, importance of defending multilateralism, a strong people-centric partnership between Global South nations, deepening strategic partnership including trade, energy, tech, defense, health, and more. Successes of BRICS summit in Brazil and transition to the next presidency of the bloc, which will be led by India. Meanwhile, the SBI research report released on Friday noted that while major economies, including India, will feel effects of steep tariffs, the United States itself will not remain unaffected. For instance, high levies on Indian pharma products would directly impact the costs of medical care for many American citizens. Meanwhile, adverse reactions to US President Trump's trade policies are coming in from different parts of the world. The recent trade agreement eliminating import tariffs on US goods, including seafood, has cast uncertainty over the future of Indonesia's shrimp industry, the world's fourth largest exporter of the crustacean.
Yang paling berdampak sih
The biggest impact is on growth opportunities. We see now that growth opportunities are very suppressed.
itu sangat ditekan.
Switzerland has decided to continue talks with the United States after President Donald Trump placed crippling import tariffs of 39% on Swiss goods, which threatened to inflict serious damage on its export-focused economy.
The situation now is that we want to continue these negotiations. We also want a regulated relationship with the United States. It is an important trading partner. But we also say today that this should not come at any price.
Allerdings
Japan has lowered its official forecast for real GDP growth in fiscal 2025 to 0.7% from the 1.2% projected in the beginning of the year, citing newly imposed US reciprocal tariffs as a key drag on the economy. Earlier, responding to steep American tariffs, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated India's stance of never compromising the interests of its farmers, even if it means facing economic consequences. Meanwhile, Russia and India stressed their commitment to a strategic partnership and bilateral security talks in Moscow after US President Donald Trump announced higher tariffs on imports from India because of its purchases of Russian oil. Shubhendu Ghosh's report, DD India.
The United States average tariff rate has surged to 20.1%, its highest level since early 1910s, barring a brief spike earlier this year after new duties came into force on Thursday. According to fresh data from the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund, the figure marks a dramatic jump from the 2.4% rate in place when Donald Trump took office in January of 2017. The rate calculated by the WTO and the IMF applies to the latest rates to 2024 trade volumes. WTO and IMF calculation factors in the latest trade agreements Washington has struck with the European Union, Japan, South Korea, and other partners, applying the updated rates to 2024 trade volumes. The updated average tariff rate exceeds the nearly 20% rate that the United States applied in the 1930s, a period of high tariffs that economists widely consider behind the severity and the duration of the Great Depression. In other news, Israel's political security cabinet approved a plan to take control of Gaza City early on Friday, triggering global criticism at home and abroad. British Prime Minister Starmer said Israel's decision on Gaza City is wrong, while United Nations called decision to expand military operation deeply alarming. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen urged Israel to consider decision on further extending its military operations in Gaza. Turkey's foreign minister will travel to Egypt on Saturday for talks with senior officials on Israel's plan to take control of Gaza and on the humanitarian situation there.
In a significant move, Israel's political security cabinet approved a plan which entails expansion of its military operations to take full control of Gaza City. Announcing the decision, the Office of Prime Minister of Israel said that the security cabinet, by a majority vote, adopted the 5 principles to conclude the war. These principles are disarming of Hamas, return of all the hostages, the living and the deceased, demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, Israeli security control in the Gaza Strip, establishment of an alternative civil administration that is neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. Earlier on Thursday, in an interview to Fox News, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel intends to take military control of all of Gaza.
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do.
The new plan triggered swift criticism from across the globe, with many urging Israel to reconsider its decision. The EU chief, Ursula von der Leyen, said that the Israeli government's decision to further extend its military operation in Gaza must be reconsidered. At the same time, there must be the release of all hostages who are being held in inhumane conditions, and humanitarian aid must be given immediate and unhindered access to Gaza to deliver what is urgently needed on the ground. A ceasefire is needed now. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said, the Israeli government's decision to further escalate its offensive in Gaza is wrong, and we urge it to reconsider immediately. This action will do nothing to bring an end to this conflict or to help secure the release of the hostages. It will only bring more bloodshed. Meanwhile, the United Nations said that any decision to expand Israel's military operations in Gaza is deeply alarming.
We have seen the announcements of the Israeli cabinet, and I can say that if confirmed, this we'll see what happens, but any decision to expand Israel's military operations in Gaza are deeply alarming. And obviously, it is clear that this would risk catastrophic consequences for millions of Palestinians and could further endanger the lives of the remaining hostages in Gaza.
In a major shift, Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that the German government will not approve any exports of military equipment that could be used in the Gaza Strip until further notice. Chancellor Friedrich Merz said in a statement, the German government believes that the even tougher military action in the Gaza Strip decided upon by the Israeli cabinet last night makes it increasingly difficult to see how these goals can be achieved. Under these circumstances, the German government will not approve any exports of military equipment that could be used in the Gaza Strip until further notice. The spokesperson of the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, rejected Israel's decision to take full control of Gaza City. Of 251 hostages captured during Hamas's 2023 attack, 49 are still being held in Gaza, of which the military says 27 are dead. Fuzail Ahmed reports for DD India.
Meanwhile, US Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee backed Israel's plan to take military control of the entire Gaza Strip. In an interview, Huckabee said administration respects Israel's right to defend itself.
Till this very moment, the position of the president has been that he respects that Israel has a right to defend itself. It has a right to determine how it does that. Certainly, we're a partner with Israel. We care very much about the way things go forward. But it's never been the role of the U.S. to dictate Israel's policy any more than it would be the policy of Israel to dictate our policy.
Meanwhile, Belgium's Air Force continued its airdrop of 8 packages into Gaza on Friday. According to Defense Ministry, since Sunday, Belgium has delivered some 71 tons of humanitarian goods dropped over the Gaza Strip. Israel announced that it would start to allow the gradual entry of goods into Gaza via private sector to increase the volume of aid entering the enclave, while reducing reliance on the United Nations. The approved supplies include baby food, fruits, vegetables, hygiene products, and basic staples. US Vice President J.D. Vance began his UK visit on Friday with talks with British Foreign Secretary David Lammy. During the meeting, both leaders discussed developing situation in the Middle East and in Gaza. The two leaders also discussed Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Today, of course, we will be discussing the developing situation in the Middle East and in Gaza, which is of great concern, and of course the ongoing war in Ukraine and our desire to see that come to an end, and I'm sure we'll be reflecting on other issues of global interest and concern.
And US Vice President Vance said US has no plan to recognize a Palestinian state, adding President Trump has been very clear about his goals, about what he wants to accomplish in the Middle East, and he is going to keep on doing that.
We're to talk about. Obviously, the United Kingdom is going to make its decision. We have no plans to recognize a Palestinian state. I don't know what it would mean to really recognize a Palestinian state, given the lack of a functional government there. You know, what the president has made very clear is our two goals are very simple right now vis-a-vis the situation in Israel and Gaza. Number one, we want to make it so that Hamas cannot attack innocent Israeli civilians ever again, and we think that has to come through the eradication of Hamas.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. China's Xi Jinping welcomes renewed US-Russia dialogue in phone call with Putin. China accuses Philippines of playing with fire on Taiwan amid rising tensions. And the latest on the weather front from across the world.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. President Xi Jinping told his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in a phone call on Friday that China was pleased to see Moscow and Washington improving their relations. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV reported that Xi had talked to Putin on Friday at the Russian leader's request. Putin briefed Xi on the situation of recent contact and communications between the United States and Russia, as well as the situation in Ukraine. The call came after the Kremlin said on Thursday that Putin would meet President Donald Trump in the coming days in search for an end to the war, now in its fourth year. Friday's call between Xi and Putin was their second in less than 2 months. Putin and US President Trump are set to hold talks in a bid to end the conflict in Ukraine. Meanwhile, China's preparation for possible coercive action against Taiwan has intensified dramatically. It has ramped up military activity around the island, escalating tensions in the region. Amid these tensions, China has warned Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., asking him not to play with fire after he signaled that Philippines would be forced to get involved if there is a potential conflict between China and Taiwan. Here's more.
China has again upped military activities against Taiwan. On Friday, the island's defense ministry in a statement said that it detected 57 sorties of People's Liberation Army aircraft, 6 PLA Navy ships and 4 official ships operating around Taiwan. It alleged that 38 out of 57 sorties crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's northern, central, southwestern and eastern ADIZ, Air Defense Identification Zone. According to Defense Ministry statement, Taiwanese armed forces have monitored the situation and responded accordingly. Taiwan's Defense Ministry had also detected 15 Chinese military aircraft, 7 Chinese naval vessels and 1 official ship operating around its territory on Thursday. In a social media post, the Defense Ministry said 14 of the 15 Chinese aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's northern, southwestern and eastern air defense identification zones. Earlier on Wednesday also, Taiwan detected 16 Chinese military aircraft, 6 Chinese naval vessels and 1 official ship operating around the island. Meanwhile, Philippines leader Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in an interview in New Delhi expressed his government's concern for the safety and welfare of more than 100,000 Filipino nationals residing in Taiwan. He pointed out the country's geographic proximity to Taiwan, stating that any military conflict there would inevitably affect the Philippines and would force his country to mobilize all resources to evacuate Filipino nationals. Taking exception to it, China on Friday warned Philippines leader Ferdinand Marcos Jr. against it and said he's playing with fire. In a statement, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that there is only one China in the world and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. The Chinese Foreign Ministry stressed the Taiwan issue is China's internal affair and not open to interference by others. Bureau Report, DD India.
The World Health Organization (WHO) has said that hunger and disease are spreading in war-torn Sudan, with famine already present in several areas. 25 million people acutely food insecure, and nearly 100,000 cholera cases have been recorded since last July. Sudan's conflict between the army and the rival rapid support forces has displaced millions and split the country into rival zones of control, with the RSF still deeply embedded in Western Sudan, and funding cuts are hampering humanitarian aids. Cholera has also hit a camp for Darfur refugees in neighboring eastern Chad. The United Nations Refugee Agency informed on Friday. According to UNHCR, an outbreak in the Dugui refugee settlement has so far resulted in 264 cases and 12 deaths, leading the agency to suspend the relocation of refugees from the border with Sudan to prevent new cases. The Brazilian government expressed deep indignation to the US Embassy on Friday over a social media post targeting the judge overseeing former President Jair Bolsonaro's trial. Brazil Foreign Ministry summoned US Chargé d'Affaires after the embassy posted that Washington was closely monitoring the situation of Judge Alexandre de Moraes. The Brazilian diplomatic source said that threatening the authorities of a democratic country is unacceptable. Last month, the Trump administration sanctioned Moraes after he ordered Bolsonaro to wear an electronic ankle bracelet and stay off social media for the duration of the trial. Mexico is not investigating alleged ties between Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and the Sinaloa cartel and has no evidence of such ties, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Friday. When asked by a reporter about Washington specifically accusing Maduro of collaborating with the Sinaloa cartel, Sheinbaum said it was the first time she had heard of the topic. US President Trump's administration in February labeled the Sinaloa cartel and other criminal groups as global terrorist organizations. The United States has doubled its bounty on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to $50 million. Maduro faces federal drug trafficking charges, whose most recent election victory was not recognized by Washington. The previous bounty was set in January at $25 million. In 2020, during President Trump's first term in office, Maduro and other high-ranking Venezuelan officials were indicted in federal court in New York on several charges, including participating in a narco-terrorism conspiracy. The Justice Department accused Maduro of leading a cocaine trafficking gang called the Cartels of the Suns that shipped hundreds of tons of narcotics into the U.S. over 2 decades, earning hundreds of millions of dollars. In a video on social media, Attorney General Pam Bondi said he is one of the largest narco-traffickers in the world and a threat to U.S. national security. Bondi said Maduro also had worked with Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and Mexico's Sinaloa cartel.
Today, the Department of Justice and State Department are announcing a historic $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. Maduro uses foreign terrorist organizations like TDA, Sinaloa, and Cartel of the Suns to bring deadly drugs and violence into our country. To date, the DEA has seized 30 tons of cocaine linked to Maduro and his associates, with nearly 7 tons linked to Maduro himself, which represents a primary source of income for the deadly cartels based in Venezuela and Mexico. Cocaine is often laced with fentanyl, resulting in the loss and destruction of countless American lives.
Southeast Asia is witnessing a wave of fast-paced diplomacy, with Malaysia set to lead an ASEAN mission to Myanmar on September 19 to push for peace after years of conflict. In a surprise move, Myanmar has hired a US lobbying firm in a $3 million a year deal to rebuild ties with Washington. Meanwhile, Cambodia and Thailand have agreed to a ceasefire accord over their disputed border, a step welcomed by the UN as a sign of regional political will. DD India's Nishcha Roy has more.
From civil war-torn Myanmar to tense border lines between Thailand and Cambodia, Southeast Asia is witnessing a flurry of high-stakes diplomacy aimed at cooling conflicts and mending fractured ties. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, bloc's diplomacy is stepping up in Southeast Asia. Malaysia, holding the ASEAN bloc's chair, will lead a delegation to Myanmar next month after the junta lifted its state of emergency. The September 19th visit will include foreign ministers from Indonesia, Thailand and the Philippines, as ASEAN struggles to end the bloodshed that erupted after the 2021 ouster of Aung San Suu Kyi. Despite barring junta leaders from its summits, the bloc's peace push has yet to bear fruit. Adding intrigue, a Washington lobbying firm, DCI Group, has inked a $3 million a year deal with Myanmar's Ministry of Information to help rebuild ties with the US, a sharp shift given American sanctions and its stance on Rohingya atrocities. Meanwhile, on another fault line of regional tension, Cambodia and Thailand have sealed a rare ceasefire accord to halt clashes along their disputed border, concluded in Kuala Lumpur with China, Malaysia and the US as observers. The pact commits both sides to cease all weapons fire, avoid troop buildups and reduce the risk of renewed flare-ups. UN Chief Antonio Guterres hailed the agreement as a welcome sign of political will.
The Secretary General is pleased at efforts by the leadership in Cambodia and Thailand to halt all fighting, and he hopes that they will continue to be in dialogue to resolve all outstanding issues between the two countries.
From tense frontiers to troubled capitals, Southeast Asia's diplomacy is in overdrive, in the hope that dialogue, not gunfire, will define the region's future. Nishchay Roy's report for DD India.
Let's now turn to weather updates. A wildfire larger than Paris, which killed one person and injured more than a dozen in southern France, was brought under control on Friday. Around 2,000 firefighters are still working to fully extinguish the blaze. In Japan, meanwhile, a heavy rain emergency was issued for the Kirishima city. Its record rainfall lashed the southern region, dropping nearly 500 millimeters of rain in the past 24 hours. More in this report.
Extreme weather conditions wreak havoc across the globe, from devastating wildfires in Europe to relentless rains in Asia. As climate patterns grow increasingly unpredictable, communities across the globe are getting affected. A massive wildfire that has scorched through 16,000 hectares of forest and villages in southern France has been contained. Officials said that firefighters will remain deployed in the area in the coming days to prevent flare-ups. The biggest wildfire in 8 decades killed a woman and injured 18 people. Residents are still barred from returning to their homes without official clearance. Neighboring Spain is experiencing extreme heat wave, with temperatures nearing 40 degrees Celsius in many regions. The extreme heat is expected to last until at least Wednesday. Wildfires deepen across North America. In the United States, firefighting aircraft was seen flying over a fast-moving bushfire in California's Ventura County. Evacuation orders have been issued for parts of Los Angeles County. In Asia, China is on high alert as torrential rains trigger severe flooding in central and northwest China. 10 people are dead and 33 missing in the Gansu province. President Xi Jinping ordered utmost efforts in rescuing the missing people. In Japan, record rainfall hit southern island of Kyushu on Friday as authorities urged residents to evacuate and warned of possible landslides. Rainfall over the past 24 hours in the Kirishima city has already exceeded 500 millimeters. Officials issued highest level warnings in parts of the region. Several states of India are also grappling with floodwaters. In Uttarakhand, authorities are working to provide food and relief materials in areas affected by a cloudburst in the Dharali district. Over 500 people have been evacuated on Friday. Monsoon rains continue across Uttar Pradesh, swelling rivers like Ganga and Yamuna. Several districts are now facing flood. From Europe to Asia, it's clear the climate crisis is accelerating and the world must act before it's too late. Bureau Report, DD India.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. We talk about the implications of Trump tariffs for India and the world. India's Home Minister Amit Shah lays foundation for Janki Temple revamp in Bihar's Sitamarhi district. And Prime Minister Modi's Mann Ki Baat radio program generates over rupees 34 crore revenue since its inception.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Hello. Johar.
Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout ho gaya.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Focus on peaceful resolution of Ukraine conflict and deepening bilateral ties. Trump's tariffs induce volatility in global markets. India, Brazil reaffirm commitment to defend multilateralism amid tariff challenge. And United Nations says Israel's decision to expand military operations in Gaza deeply alarming as Prime Minister Netanyahu seeks complete control of Gaza. And we turn to our top story of Donald Trump's tariffs to take forward the conversation. Joining me is Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri, former senior diplomat. Good evening and welcome, sir. We're also expecting Dr. Gautam Sen from London School of Economics to join us in a bit. Ambassador Puri, we'll first learn about, is there clarity on what Donald Trump is seeking to achieve with these tariffs? Given that the reasons vary from trade deficits to political ties and friendships to the Ukraine war, what is your take on it, sir?
Vendu, thank you very much. In some senses, $1 million question. But let's start from the beginning. This tariffs thing began a long time back, a few months into his presidency. You know, let me say it's part of his MAGA outlook. They want to make America great again, and they somehow or the other think that one way of making America great is to make others look down. Tariffs is a word which, in a sense, in America has got internalized as America's ability to punish, rather than being seen in the normal way that this is what Americans would have to pay for import of goods which they are using and which they are happy to use because they're coming at competitive price. So that's one side of it. If you remember, the original tariff number for India was 26%. Now, we have been further saddled with this Russian penalty. Now, the Americans knew we were importing oil from Russia. The Americans themselves are importing uranium and several other things. The Europeans are importing Russian oil. They knew this. But look, this is the geopolitics and the way things are going. Mr. Trump needs to show to his people that he's being very strong in being able to end the war, I will say so in the first place, but also to show that it's America which dictates how the war ends. I'm talking about the Ukraine conflict.
Right.
Meeting President Putin, hopefully shortly, maybe there's some kind of outcome, difficult to predict, between two leaders who are all in it by themselves and take their own views on the matter. But I am glad to say that, we are looking at it in a matured manner. Yes, we have 25 plus 25% tariffs on our goods. To say that these don't hurt, that's wrong. But to say that they will hurt tremendously, that's also exaggeration. But a good relationship with America, a good economic relationship with America, a good political relationship with America is useful for India and important for India, even geostrategically. And so, we are trying to see what we can do in terms of the negotiations towards the end of this month what is possible, but also gearing ourselves to the fact that, look, the Americans are going to levy a certain amount of tariffs. Some particular industries, pharmaceuticals, textiles, etc., jewelry, these things are going to be hit. But, let's see what we can make out of it. Let's try and get better clarity, maybe towards the end of the month or in the month's time.
Right. Let's look at the bigger picture for a moment of India-US ties. It had a very positive momentum in the recent years. Perhaps the expectations were greater with the Trump administration. But do you think this tariff issue is pushing the relations in a different direction? Or am I reading too much into it, sir?
Bendu, let me rewind a little bit. Look, our expectations of Mr. Trump when he came back were mostly guided by Trump 1.1, 1.0, where we thought we had developed a good relationship. We'd carried it through the Biden era, but there were always the little pinpricks from the Democrats talking about domestic things in India. We thought those would end with Mr. Trump. But I think we must accept that there is a change in Trump 2.0. This is not an accidental presidentship surrounded by institutionalists who may be nationalists like generals, etc. This is surrounded by ideologues. There is an element of racism in all of this. And this entire business of MAGA is to the forefront. And whether we like it or not, while we may be very happy to see a few people of Indian origin in the Trump administration, CEOs, etc., the fact is you come in their eye, and in their quest to make America great again, they think the other alternative is to make all others a little down. So I'm afraid, all those who are batting very strongly for America now are having to find themselves batting on the back foot. They're still doing a very good job, and I'm glad that we are looking at it in a matured manner, because a good and a useful relationship with America is useful for us, good for us. Having said all this, let's be very clear that Trump 2.0 is much more about himself, his country, what suits that particular population, and frankly, the global issues that we talk about, etc. And I want to make one point to you, this thing about China, which we think was a kind of tipping point, the US to tip in the direction of India and leave out China. He may just be thinking very differently. He may think that, China is the other big global hegemon. I make a deal with China, and look where I am at the top of the global ladder. The two big guys have made a deal. Well, that's something those who've been analyzing all this have been saying right from the beginning of Trump 2.0. We need to be mindful of all that.
Right. Let me here also welcome Dr. Gautam Sen, economist with London School of Economics. He's joining us live from London. Dr. Sen, good evening and welcome. Given so many variables at play, let me put a simple question. If you could help us first understand the impact of Trump's tariffs on India, what are the sectors you see perhaps will bear greater brunt?
I think gems and jewelry for sure, clothing, but so far he has exempted electronics and pharmaceuticals. But then subsequently he has said he might apply 100% duty on pharma, and he wants it to be returned to the United States. Now, you see, the issue is this. Nothing unusual has happened to India. He has done worse to his closest allies, Canada, Mexico, Republic of Korea, Japan. So actually nothing has happened to India that should be regarded as a trajectory in its own right. I would also suggest what is happening really is to do with Trump and not the United States, because hardly anybody that I'm listening to in the United States, hardly any professional is able to grasp what he is doing, because the economics is haywire and the economics is inimical to America's short, medium-term and long-term interests. And the consequences will unfold very shortly. You see, the American deficit of 1 trillion is equal almost exactly to its fiscal deficit. That is the reason why the United States has a deficit, not because of unfair trade practices. Yes, there are unfair trade practices, particularly where China is concerned, but that is really a minor part of the larger picture. Now, we in India, I will say two things. One, we have to treat this like a natural calamity, like COVID. something totally unexpected which we have to deal with. I was vastly reassured to hear the former principal economic advisor to the Ministry of Commerce, Rupa Datta, who was outlining a series of measures being contemplated. I'm afraid this is the best we can do. The government of India seems to have understood what it has to do, and we hope the worst will pass because the US will itself begin to suffer. 80% of all the tariff revenue has been paid by US consumers. It is huge, and it may mitigate his big and beautiful budget deficit, but the United States will not be happy. And if he imposes major tariffs on pharmaceuticals, it will affect a huge swathe of the population. I would have thought it will affect 75 to 80% of all Americans, and they will not be well pleased. I am almost certain Trump, who keeps changing his mind every other day, will find a reason for changing course.
Okay,
we
Dr.
need
San,
to hold fast.
that point, staying with your analogy of comparing the Trump tariffs with the pandemic, what is the cost that the Americans, the ordinary Americans, will have to pay for this tariff, if you could help us understand?
Well, as I just said, 80% of the tariffs have been collected from American consumers. This will shortly be reflected in prices in the shops, in the rate of inflation. But Trump is not being reasonable, not just with India and trade. He is being unreasonable across the board. If you look at the way the top executive of the Labor Bureau was sacked, a person who was not responsible for the unemployment data, he accused her of fabrication, which is completely unrealistic and false. So, this is something the world is going through, the whole world, including Americans, and it is not to do with the United States. The United States was not trading with India to do it a favor. India and the United States was doing trade with each other because there was mutual benefit, as there always is with trade. Now, there are issues with regard to India. Maybe some of India's tariffs are higher than they ought to be, but India was negotiating. But how do you negotiate with a person who has changed his mind after the negotiations are complete? The EU negotiations, where he said the EU has promised him $600 billion personally to spend as he wished. And if they do not deliver, he will raise tariffs again. So how do you negotiate with the person A, where the economics makes no sense, where there is no fairness? Because as Mr. Singh, Ambassador Singh has argued, they are importing from the Russians, the Europeans are importing from the Russians, and we are importing because we are a large country and we have to find the best price we can pay. I'm afraid we have to put up with this. There will be some suffering. I was thinking maybe the government of India can have a short-term fund and hope this will pass and fund stockpiles of some of the goods. Unfortunately for the United States, because the tariffs are differential, punishing India does not mean production will go to the United States. It will simply be diverted to another country. The United States will gain very little. So it is completely senseless.
Okay. Ambassador Puri, as Dr. Sen puts it, Trump is being unfair across the board. And in doing that, is he then risking long-term American strategic interest in ties on the altar of the MAGA agenda?
First of all, I'm delighted Professor Sen is here. We last met in Kathmandu, by the way. So very nice to see you here, Professor Sen.
Namaskar, namaskar. How good to see you, sir. How good to see you.
He and I learned the same economics. But President Trump apparently learned a different economics at the hands of a chap called Peter Navarro, who doesn't think that tariffs affect the home country, the country that levies it, and that country has what you may say inflationary likelihood as a result of it. Okay. Now, in the very simplistic way of thinking, when was the United States not wanting tariffs? When it was at the top of the world, it had no competitor, it felt you should have low tariffs, and it asked the whole world to do free trade. Is the United States feeling that it's not at the top of the world? Is the Chinese challenge, the challenge from other emerging economies, in some senses hurting them? I think the MAGA lot, they think that they are being hurt, and that's a fact. Will this trade, these tariffs result in people investing in America? You've seen Tim Cook present a gold kind of memento to him and saying Apple will, well, let's see what happens. But I can't see Americans producing simple things such as dolls and Christmas presents, producing shirts, laundry, or even bananas, etc. in the near term. But this is all a question of how much the American people are willing to bear. Now, in the tariffs, which of course they've paid for, in some senses, the American deficit is being settled. Now, these are complex questions. These are about theoretical economics. We can go on. But my understanding is that as of now, the Trump world, the MAGA world, is believing that levying the tariffs is showing the others their place. And the others are not just China, not just Russia, but also BRICS countries and anybody who doesn't agree with their leader. So, there is this entire political issue which is being portrayed forward. How the people will react to the Christmas season, we have to wait and see. But I believe very strongly in India. We need to take this in a matured manner. We need to know that there is an impetuous leader who's got elected. He's got his own agendas there, but the relationship with the United States is important. Let's just try and see weather the storm, try to make it a little less powerful if we can, etc. We are trying to see if we can put up some newer things for the trade deal with the US when their team comes here. Let's try and see what best can be done. These things have negative sort of fallouts also in other ways. On the United States, that's their problem. But on us, it becomes our problem.
Right, Dr. Sen,
I would
your
just
final
like to
thoughts.
add something. I would like to add something. I repeat again, what is happening now really is to do with Trump and his team. It is not to do with the United States at large. The US and India have long-term convergence in many areas, long-term convergence in geopolitics, which we do not have in our neighborhood. In our neighborhood, we have a real issue. So I am not going to say that this is going to have a permanent impact. I think we have to sit it out. India is behaving in a very mature way. We should not be provocative because the attempt to bring industry back to the United States will largely fail. It will be far too costly. Even pharmaceuticals from scratch will be 3 to 5 years, and they are not willing to pay the huge price. India is a very competitive producer of quality pharmaceuticals in generics and much more. So I think we need to sit this out, take some punishment, and I am sure the government has thought this through, and they are reacting in a mature way. We should not be provocative. We should not rise to the bait. Yes, we should signal, and that too the government has done. I am very impressed with the team and Mr. Modi's people.
On that note, many thanks, Dr. Gautam Sen, Ambassador Manjeev Puri, for joining us in this edition of News Hour. I'm glad you could both meet one another. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back home, proceedings of both houses of the parliament were stalled on Friday by the opposition parties, protested over the issue of special intensive revision exercise in Bihar, leading to adjournment of the House for the day. The Lok Sabha, that is the lower house, witnessed 2 adjournments since it convened at 11 a.m., finally reconvened at 3 p.m. However, it was adjourned within 5 minutes due to continuous protests by the opposition benches. The upper house, that is Rajya Sabha, has been adjourned till 11 a.m. on Monday. As the parliament reconvenes next week, attention will turn to whether the opposition and government can find common ground to restore order and resume legislative business. India's Home Minister Amit Shah performed Bhumi Pujan for comprehensive development of Banarodham Temple and Complex, the birthplace of Sita, wife of Lord Ram, in Sitamarhi district of Bihar today. The foundation has been laid for the overall development of the Dham temple complex at a cost of 890 crore rupees. Life lessons from the life of Sita and stories of Ramayana will be told. Interestingly, through the 3D experience, India's youth will also be able to see the inspiring incidents from the life of Janaki along with Lord Ram. Home Minister Amit Shah also flagged off the Amrit Bharat train from Sitamarhi to Delhi through video conferencing. Minister of State for External Affairs and Textiles Pavitra Margareta on Friday emphasized the deep cultural and economic significance of handloom products in India. Speaking at the India International Handwoven Expo 2025 at Bharat Mandapam in Delhi, Margareta said expos like this promote sustainability, circularity and encourage entrepreneurs, stakeholders and the next generation to engage with the handloom and textile industry.
Producers and entrepreneurs with the global market. So these are such platforms where our exhibitors, even from my state of Assam, I have seen from remotest area of northeastern state are exhibiting their fine products here at Bharat Mandapam. Yes. So in front of our the foreign buyers. Yes. So this is the thing. Not only the government, but entire stakeholders are working for the overall development of our handloom sector.
And some good news coming from Prime Minister Modi's radio program Mann Ki Baat. The program has brought in immense revenue since its inception. It has earned over 34 crore rupees in revenue since it began its maiden telecast in 2014. The broadcast has become a unique platform to spotlight inspiring stories from across the country and to encourage citizens to actively participate in India's development journey. Through this program, Prime Minister has celebrated the efforts of farmers, youth, women, artisans, sportspersons and everyday changemakers, turning Mann Ki Baat into a soft tool of nation building and a powerful driver of public discourse. The 14th edition of the Indian Magazine Congress 2025 was held in New Delhi, hosted by Association of Indian Magazines. The event focused on the theme, The Deep Connect, Building Communities, Nurturing Trust and Reimagining the Future. In this event, prominent leaders from India's magazine, media and advertising sectors discussed the emerging trends and challenges in the publishing landscape. During the event, Prasar Bharati CEO Gaurav Dwivedi launched a new magazine, eStraw, on Waves OTT. Speaking on the relevance of Waves, CEO Prasar Bharati said that it is the responsibility of Prasar Bharati to provide free information and education to the general public.
We thought that if we are having this OTT, which is going to bring in music and video content to the audiences, then why should we keep the written word out of it? First thing that we did there was that whatever material was available within our own ministry, the INP ministry, the magazines, Yojana, Kurukshetra, Bal Bharati, we brought all of these, in fact, the oldest versions, dating back 30, 40 years, the entire archives are now on Waves OTT. And immediately after that, then he called me up and we said, okay, now let's tie up hands with the private publishers also and invite them. And here we are today, 50 different titles across 8 different languages are launched here today. And we look forward to having more and more of the industry ecosystem coming and joining hands with us, reaching out to the audiences across India and outside.
India has hit its 20% ethanol blending target in petrol 5 years ahead of schedule. Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said the move saves foreign exchange, boosts farmer incomes and cuts carbon emissions. Indian Oil's Panipat refinery is now certified to produce sustainable aviation fuel, marking another clean energy milestone.
India has achieved a clean energy milestone 5 years ahead of schedule. Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri announced that India has reached 20% ethanol blending in petrol in 2025, a target originally set for 2030 from just 1.5% in 2014 to 20% today. That's a 13-fold jump in 11 years. The journey has not been easy. It required building a robust ecosystem, but the results are transformative.
We ended 2014 with what, 1.53% of blending, and the post-2014 process was that here, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, we looked at it not as just one mission, but you had to build an entire ecosystem to achieve that target. And today, we can look back, we got that target 5 months in advance. Then we set ourselves a target of 20%. And now I come to where you asked me, we did that 5 years in advance.
In another first, Indian Oil's Panipat refinery is now certified to produce sustainable aviation fuel under the Global CORSIA framework, marking India's entry into greener skies.
CORSIA, which is the clean air environmental arm of ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, they have certified the use of used cooking oil in the Panipat refinery to make sustainable aviation fuel. We are making ethanol from broken food grain. So I think this is a program which has taken off.
Ethanol blending has saved 1.36 lakh crore rupees in foreign exchange and put 1.18 lakh crore rupees directly into farmers' hands, boosting rural incomes and strengthening the agricultural economy. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
Dubai has turned its most famous shopping malls into fitness tracks for a unique month-long event called Dubai Mallathon, launched by Crown Prince Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. The program transforms malls into early morning workout arenas from 7 to 10 a.m. The initiative offers air-conditioned escape from the summer heat with specially marked walking and running tracks inside 9 major malls in Dubai. Community response has been strong, with residents, visitors and families joining in the morning runs and walks. Time now for updates from the world of sports. The classical tournament at Chennai Grand Masters has kicked off with strong performances from world number 5 Arjun Agassi and German Grandmaster Vincent Kemmer. In the second round, Germany's Vincent Kemmer overcame a stiff challenge from India's Pranav V to attain the sole lead. On Friday, top seed Arjun Agassi and Dutch Grandmaster M. Jordan van Forest settled for a draw after an evenly matched battle. The Indian Grandmaster is now joint second in the standings with 1.5 points, along with America's Ray Robson, who beat Vidit Gujrathi in a dramatic encounter. India's Nihal Sarin missed out on a win after working his way into a superior position against Dutch Grandmaster Anish Giri. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS. You can scan this QR code on the screen and download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.